We're visiting with Texas Comptroller Glenn Hegar, and let me ask you about a small business tax holiday. That's something that you've brought up.
Right.
Even on the campaign trail, you were talking about
Right.
tax holidays. Where are we on a possible tax holiday for small businesses?
Yeah, we laid out, I was talking with NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business, last week about a small tax holiday for small businesses, and that was for businesses under $5 million in income. And one of the things I've made a point is that if you look at innovation, you look at employment, small business, all businesses are important. But the vast majority of number of businesses in any society are small businesses. And I have yet to find a big business or a middle-sized business that didn't start out as a small business. And the hardest thing for a mom and pop small business is really getting past that first year, that first 18 months. And once they can get past that, then they can continue to survive. And one of the things that I almost preach, I'll use the word preach in my agency, is customer service. And that customer service really ends up being to the taxpayers, because that's really who we interface with. And so therefore, I want to make sure that we give the highest level of service to the taxpayers, because we've got to make sure that we do everything that we can not to put an extra burden on them. And a sales tax holiday is a little bit different, but it'll enable those businesses to have an added opportunity to get past and grow, which they're the economic engine really of the state of Texas.
As the legislative session continues, we're a little bit more than halfway there, and obviously the budget is coming together. How much interaction do you have with lawmakers?
I have a lot of interaction with lawmakers. I'm back and forth to the Capitol quite a bit, talking to them on obviously the phone. We had this morning, we had breakfast with Lieutenant Governor, Speaker, and the Governor over at the Governor's Mansion. We have our Wednesday breakfast in part just so we can kind of talk and get on some discussion between the two sides of the rotunda. And the fact is if you look at the Comptroller's office, as I mentioned at a breakfast speech that I had this morning, we're really almost a central nervous system for the state of Texas, because we do all the treasury, the financing, the tax collection, the interface with the taxpayers. And so therefore it's really important that I'm interfacing with the legislators and the policymakers to make sure that they know what we know from the economic health of the state of Texas, because that's our role and that's our job as it comes to different tax bills as they're working through, kind of as I mentioned to a few of them today, that we've spent a lot of time trying to help them get them numbers, as in if they did a small business tax cut, how does that impact those businesses in the economy? How does it impact if they do this? So all their decisions can have intended and unintended consequences. And as kind of the number crunchers, it may not be real glamorous what we do, but it's really important to the health of this economy.
Absolutely. Let's talk about local economies, because another big area that your office and your predecessor really started was looking at local debt, because that's something that the average citizen, you probably don't think about. The average citizen, they don't think about how much local debt the cities are carrying, but this is really hurting the state.
It can have a real impact, because obviously if you take money out, it's kind of something that my wife and I try to instill already in my 10-year-old daughter. And here this end of the week, my twins will be 7. And even though they're 10, 7, and 7, we're already talking about budgeting and numbers. And if you borrow money, you got to pay it back. But then there's a thing called interest.
Yeah.
So you're going to pay more money back than what you got in the beginning. And so therefore, even though that's at the basic level, we as the taxpayers really need to have a full grasp of what is the debt levels, not only on the state level, not just on the national level, but also on the local level, because we may want to go ahead and have that road built, we may want to have that water infrastructure built, which we need to have those basic services, but every time you take dollars out, you're pushing off those costs to a future generation. And we need to be very cognizant of what is that cost going to be, because otherwise it can have real implications on really the economic health of the future generations 10 and 20 years down the road. And so my predecessor, Susan Combs, did a really great job of trying to promote transparency and making sure that people have the right information to understand what is that local debt load. So if you pass this one more bond package, it may not be the only bond package.
Right.
It may have been on top of 5 more. And that cumulative impact, what is that going to do to this local community? That doesn't mean that borrowing money to buy a house is a bad thing, because nobody can pay cash. But it also means that you have to understand the full implications for not just the short term, but the long term. And unfortunately, a lot of times people in life, and I think government especially, is not real good at looking at the long term.
How can people, those listening back in Lubbock and throughout West Texas, how can they get that information?
A lot of information. My predecessor did a lot of good things of trying to put a lot of things on the controller's website. And what we're trying to do is refresh that. In part is when I was in the state Senate back in '07, and we had passed some legislation to put the open window to government at the controller's office, which really was for state expenditures. And then Susan Combs, my predecessor, took that to the next level and looking at state level debt as well. But one of the things is when those things were implemented back in 2009, I don't know if you've noticed, technology's changed a little bit.
Just a little.
Just a little bit. And so therefore we need to make sure that the average person can have that easily accessible. Most people don't go and browse a website. They just do a search.
Right.
And it goes right to the landing page. And so we have to make sure that the information back home in Lubbock, back in South Texas, East Texas, West Texas, wherever people are throughout the big state of Texas, that they can get that easily and accessible. And so that's what we're coming in this administration to do, a refresh, so you can go find that when you do that internet search real easy.
Texas Comptroller Glenn Hegar, appreciate your time today.
Glad to be here.
Appreciate you swinging by the Capitol after your meeting. And see, you mentioned the leadership meeting that you had. See, folks, they do all talk to each other on a regular basis. Everyone gets together and talks, and that's how communication gets flowing.
But what's more important is we get back home into our districts and among the people, because you got to talk to the average people who are doing all the hard work.